Go kind of quick through it, but it's a good one. So we're saying that the difference between the Kuma Hashem that Moshe said to the Kuma Hashem that David said, because they both said Kuma Hashem. Moshe said Kuma Hashem vayafutzu oivecha, and David said Kuma Hashem limnu chasecha. So the difference between them is that the way that the birur, the refinement of the world in both their generations took place. That the birur through the Aron, when it was going around in the desert, was, we said, in a way of war, and therefore it says vayafutzu oivecha vayanusu misanecha. Therefore, there's the existence of enemy and sort of hated ones who are menagdim. They basically are in opposition, and you need to fight with them. So this is the idea that Moshe's birur in the world was in a way of war, and therefore he says, "Rise, Hashem, and scatter your enemies." Oh, you got one for Yosef there?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Whereas in the Beis HaMikdash, we said it was in a way of manucha, in a way of peace, and everyone came to him, as we said previously. But the difference is also in the birur atzma. It was not just in the way that the birur, the refinement, was done. One was in a way of war, one was in a way of peace, but also the actual effect of the refinement was different. That in Moshe's case, it says vayafutzu and vayanusu. You shall scatter, your enemies shall flee, which means that after the birur of the Aron traveling around in the desert, they were still menagdim, right? They were still enemies, but they were just in a state of fleeing and in a state of scattered. The idea being that he did not uproot the enemy entirely, right? They just scattered the enemy. And he says that, okay, so we'll sort of take it inside now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines down from Os Tes. When it comes to refining something from above to below, which was the case even in Moshe's case, even though he went into the enemy land, we said, he didn't actually invest himself into the enemy, if you recall, right? There was an automatic nullification of the snakes and scorpions in the mountains just from him being there. So he was like sort of in the middle path. But it was still called from above to below. So when you go from above to below, which means the higher one does not invest itself eino mislavish betachton into the lower one's own boundaries and space. The habiru betachton hu al yedei gilu ora elyon, and therefore only the way it happens is that there's just a revelation of light. Moshe brings the Aron and the Ark, and suddenly there's a revelation of light, and that's how the snakes got destroyed. Zeh shatachton einu menagid hu lo mitzad hametzius shelo. Ela adrav mitei she'al yedei shemeir bo gilui or she'einu be'erech elav hu mizbatu metziuso. So the fact is that when it comes from the standpoint of the Elyon, from above to below, the reason that suddenly there's no more opposition from the Tachton, from the one you're trying to refine, is not from himself. It's not from his wishes, his desires, his intellect, his emotions, etc. It's not coming from him that he gets refined. But on the contrary, it's because you shine a light on him which is higher than his capacity, and therefore he gets nullified out of existence. So when Moshe came with the snakes, it's not that he turned the snakes into a good guy. It's just that he brought so much light, the snakes evaporated. That's called from above to below. You get it, Laser? Levi, you with us?
A good analogy is when they held that copper replica of the snake up, because it was looking up, right? And they look up, taken from above. Maybe I'm wrong, but
Well, that was the ending of them doing tshuva, right? So they really did change. They had remorse.
okay.
Here's the situation that there's no change, basically. It's from the standpoint of the one that's being refined. He doesn't have to do tshuva. He just gets nullified out of his existence.
Didn't we say that in the desert the enemies, they didn't like transform and became good. They just like, you know, they kind of like ran
They
away.
scattered.
They ran away.
Yeah,
Like,
they got nullified.
Right, but
They didn't change.
They didn't change.
That's
right.
the point we're trying to make.
Right.
God laser. Vehine keshabirur hu be'ofen sha'elyon. So when the refinement takes place in such a way that the higher one, hamevarer, the one who's refining, balim komo shel atacht, when he comes into the place, he leaves his castle and he comes into the place of the enemy, hamisbarer, the one who's being refined. Harezeh mochiach she'atachton tofes makom lagabe. So what we said this before. This is a sign that the lower one is tofes makim, holds a place by the higher one. In other words, he recognizes his existence, he recognizes his significance in some way. The very fact that he has to leave his palace is proof of that he realizes the existence of the enemy. Even though he's nullifying him from above to below, he's not so far above him that he doesn't even recognize the existence of his enemy. Tofes makim takes up place. Like he holds place by him, he recognizes his existence. Therefore, it's not relevant. Someone who is busy recognizing your existence cannot simultaneously undo your entire existence. So even though Moshe was in the desert and he was so powerful with the ark, he was able to nullify his enemies just by showing up to them, because they were nullified by his awesome light. He was so high above them. He wasn't so high above them that he didn't recognize their place. And therefore, since he did recognize their place, he couldn't completely undo them from existence, because you can't simultaneously be in two worlds where you're so far beyond the entity that you're trying to nullify that you don't recognize him, while you're busy being in his place. In other words, as a way of analogy, we're saying that there is an aspect of divinity which is beyond the worlds. In other words, before Hashem made the world, was he there? He was there. And at that place that he was there was a certain level of divine energy which was too high to even consider there to be worlds. Hashem didn't think of the worlds yet. So at that level of divinity, Hashem does not consider the worlds. They don't take up place in his mind. They're not there. So if you could somehow get that light into the world, and put that in front of an entity, the entity would nullify itself right out of existence, because it's in front of something that is the true God, which doesn't even recognize his existence. But if God himself already decides to think of the worlds, and then you're dealing with that level of divinity who's already a contracted element of God, who's brought himself down to think of the worlds, and then you shine that light on a creation, it's impossible to nullify it out of existence, because it's busy recognizing the creation at that level of divinity. You follow that?
Yeah.
That's why you have to keep recognizing.
What's that?
You got to keep recognizing.
What do you mean by that?
It's got to be in a.
The question is, what's the goal? Are we trying to nullify the worlds or not? I guess that's the question we have to.
Yeah, you got to keep recognizing the world. Yeah.
In order to keep them in existence.
Yeah.
Right. So Hashem, that's a good point. So if Hashem does not continuously decide to think of us, we would just cease
we would
to
have
exist.
To constantly think of.
No. We would just in an instant we'd be gone. Because if he doesn't think of us, we can't generate our own existence. Our existence is generated by him. So he has to constantly think of us, and for him to do that, it's like going down. It's like you're thinking about some
Cake.
Mundane activity that's not like of your.
I don't know. I don't think I would say thinking.
By Hashem?
He's not just like thinking of us and like we're here. It's like he's just keeping existence alive.
Well, you're right in that we can't really describe the process because it's God.
Right.
But the Kabbalists did decide to call it by human terms, and they said thinking. They said Hashem has thoughts, Hashem has speech, and
Never mind.
Yeah, well, no, I mean you're right on a very fundamental level. You're right. It's nothing like our thinking, but since all we have is the tools at our disposal, so the Kabbalists, in their great wisdom, they did relate God to the human form, and this idea that just like before you think of something, right? I'm going to tell you right now. There's a big blueberry cheesecake with red cherries on top. You see that? A second ago, you did not see that. It was not in your mind. It wasn't even in the capacity of your thought. Like we weren't going there. And the idea is that it's the same thing. Either it comes into your mind, and before it comes into your mind, it's not there. So how about the whole worlds? Not only this world, but all of existence. Before Hashem thought of it, He wasn't thinking about it. And in which case it did not exist. Right? And the idea is that those levels of godliness, they're all still sitting there like stacked on top of each other. There's the level of godliness that is thinking about the worlds, and there's still the level of divinity before He's thinking about the worlds, believe it or not. In other words, Hashem is not confined by this idea that He's only thinking about the worlds. Part of Him is still in a state when He's not thinking about the worlds. And at that level of Him, worlds do not exist. And we do not exist. And we don't take up any place in His mind. It's like this thing is not happening. We're only happening at a certain dimmed down, contracted frequency of divinity. And therefore the whole worlds are sort of have a smaller, more condensed version of godliness than God Himself. That's the idea. So when we're talking about this little analogy of going in the desert and so forth, Moshe was trying to nullify the worlds in a positive sense, not like take them out of existence, but nullify their arrogance of thinking that they exist by themselves. So depending on what frequency of light He's going to sort of shine onto them, is how much they're going to be nullified out of their arrogance and recognize their godly place. So the idea is that since He is using the ark, okay, so there's basically, we said there's three levels of accessing an entity to try to refine it and make it godly. We'll go from below to above. One is called davening, and this one is not so clearly stated in this analogy with the ark. But we said that when you daven, it's like your godly soul literally has to crawl inside of the confines of your animal soul and fight with it from within its own perspective. So you're busy thinking negative thoughts, your godly soul is trying to, and that's called war, right? That's your tzloisa tzras krava, it says, the shast krava. The time of davening is called time of war. For this reason, that you're getting literally hand-to-hand combat with the enemy. And you're going to try and change him by subduing him in his place. So that's when you invest yourself into the parameters of the one that needs to be refined. That's stage number one. Then there's this level of Moshe Rabbeinu that we're talking about. That he went into the desert, which was warlike, but then when he actually wound up refining the enemy, he didn't have to pick up one sword. He just basically showed them the ark, and they got nullified. Okay? And then there's Shlomo HaMelech, who didn't even have to go into the place of the enemy. He just stayed inside of the palace of Hashem, and the whole world came and got refined by coming to him. He had so much light that the world came to him. You following so far? So the idea is like this. Moshe and Shlomo, they both had something in common. They both were what we call from above to below. Whereas davening is from below to above. You actually have to get the enemy, so to speak, to come to you and to change himself from his own parameters. But above to below is the enemy doesn't change. You just shine a light on him and he gets nullified. Yeah?
And then what? Then we said in the previous part that the real derech menucha is pnimis Torah.
Okay.
So what would be pnimis Torah? Like both? Like above to below, below to above? What is it?
Hold on, let me just finish this this little rant here before we get to pnimis Torah.
Okay.
So the idea is we're on this one point, which we want to bring out. How does Moshe represent this middle ground? What's the positive about this middle ground and what's the negative about this middle ground? The positive about the middle ground is that it is basically a significant enough power to just shine a light on the world and the world will nullify itself automatically. Right? You don't have to fight with it, which is a positive thing. Right? You don't have to get into the battle. You just shine the light. The negative thing is that because he has to find himself in the place of the enemy, he went into the desert to do this, it means that he does at least recognize the existence of his enemy. Which means he's not shining a light on them which is so high that it's like Hashem before he thought of the worlds. It's like it's a light of Hashem after he thought of the worlds. He does recognize the existence of, so to speak, the enemy, the other, which needs refining. So even though he's going to just turn on the light and shine it on him in order to refine him, it's not such a powerful light that it has the ability to undo his existence altogether and truly refine him in a way where he goes away, his resistance to godliness goes away forever. Because he's busy, it's only drawing from a place which is recognizing the existence of the opponent. So no matter how much light like that you throw on it, it's not going to undo his existence because it itself recognizes the existence. Everyone is clear on that? Levi? Laser? Okay. So you're saying about Panimius HaTorah, what's your question?
That we said that tefillah is like the thing, that you go inside, like, so to say, if Moshe would have gone inside of the place and like refined them by inside,
Right.
and then we said above that that's tefillah, and then we said the two things like the Mishkan and like but I think there's two different things also, and then above we said that derech menucha, like the real derech menucha is Panimius HaTorah. So where does that stand?
So basically, this is like your same question as before, and like about the Matsiyahu thing, which right now we do have enough on the table to discuss it. It's like the idea is that there's a certain mila in tefillah, right? There's a certain mila in tefillah. The mila is that you actually do get the will and the intellect and the emotion of the person to change because you're going into his place. The disadvantage is that it's tremendously contracted level of godliness that has to go down in there, that not only does it recognize the other person's existence, like Moshe Rabbeinu, but it crawls into and basically is in the boundaries themselves of the other person's existence.
Hashem, I guess, affected.
Like that's exactly like godliness that goes. So you're talking about a minute amount of godliness that is able to actually crawl into your body and actually start wrestling with your animal soul. So on one hand, it's the greatest thing ever because he can actually change the animal soul from his own perspective. On the other hand, it's not a lot of godliness. It has a huge limitation that it's like basically a small measure of godliness. And therefore, no matter how much it's going to change it, it's never going to really be able to take it out of its self altogether because the godliness itself has become like a nivra, right? Creation. So you need both. So like that's why we say like Shlomo HaMelech represents sort of like this ultimate level of elokus where it doesn't recognize the worlds, but then we're saying Matsiyahu takes that and he goes and fights with it. In other words, that he goes into the Kli as well. And that's the idea of like our generation, that the Rebbe is like sort of in an offensive with the world, going and taking it to the world and so to speak, fighting with the world. But at the same time, he's using the same Torah of Shlomo HaMelech, so to speak, in order to do it. He's got the quality of both. So that's why, even though the ultimate Indian of Manucha is like this level of Shlomo, there's yet like a higher level that you could take that level of Shlomo itself and bring it down into the world as well.
So you can do that.
You can. That's the ultimate.
And that's the where Panimius HaTorah stands. That you can take that.
Well, okay, there's different levels of it. I mean, certainly what we're saying is Shlomo HaMelech represents Panimius HaTorah is just attick, that it's the level of like the crown jewel. It's the level of Torah which is above the world in and of its own right. The fact that it can then hafatzas hamayanos chutza, right? That the Mayan itself, not just the river from the Mayan, but the actual Mayan can also go into the outside world, which is like a stira. It's a little bit of a contradiction in terms, but that's what Chassidus. So that's the ultimate power of Chassidus, to take the highest levels and bring them to the lowest places as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go on inside the Maimer. It's a little sleepy in here, Chevra. Woo!
Hey!
What's going on?
Yeah.
Ariel, how you doing? There's room at the table for you.
Get over here.
I mean, we do need a guard, but I think Yoni's on the job. Mm-hmm. Okay. So take it from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels. 5 levels. That's nice. 5 lines from the bottom. Hine keshabiru hu ba'ofen sha'elyon ha'mevar ba'al imkomo shel ha'tachton. We said this, that when the higher one has to go into the place of the lower one, it's a proof that the lower one holds place by him. Therefore, it's impossible for him to ever nullify him entirely. Therefore, even this revelation is from above to below. Which is not a way of investiture. We're talking about Moshe's level. It is still from above to below. He doesn't fully invest into the klippas. He just goes in their place. Therefore, the bittul is not an ultimate bittul that he creates. Therefore, even after he does his work, there still exists, at least in a concealed state, Matsiyahu de menaged. There is still the oivecha and the misanecha. They're still there. They're just scattered. In other words, he's able to sort of take away their harshness of the klippas, but he can't make them go away altogether. Nonetheless, but since the lower level, the world, the snakes and scorpions, the thing that needs to be refined, is still in no way comparable even to this minimized level of revelation that Moshe Rabbeinu was bearing, that the klippas have a certain, in other words, the klippas are in the mind, so to speak, and in the consciousness of the refiner. Moshe recognizes their existence, he's in their place, but they nonetheless are dealing with a light which is, as far as they're concerned, well beyond them. In other words, therefore, through this revelation, it still nullified the intensity of the Tachton. They're still sort of out of their league dealing with Moshe Rabbeinu. And the fact that they put up a resistance, that they're still called an oivecha, an enemy, and a masanecha there, he beofen the afutzu v'yanusu. It stands in a place where it's scattered and fled. Okay, so it's not completely gone, but its strength is weakened, definitely. Okay, Masha ein kein ba'biru shebederech manucha. Not so. We're dealing with Mamash Shlomo HaMelech. When you're talking about a level of full manucha, full peace type of refinement, pada v'shalom nafshi, like the Maimer is called, my soul was redeemed in peace. Dezesha elyon ha'mevaruhum b'makomo. It means that the refiner stays at his place. Ve'eno yored limkomo shel hatachtun. He does not descend into the place of the lower ones. Hu lefisha hatachtun eno tofes makom lagabe. And why is that? Because you're dealing with the level of God before he even thought of the worlds, right? In other words, why doesn't the refiner go into the place of the world? Why didn't Shlomo go waging wars against his enemies? Because as far as he was concerned, there were no enemies. He was so busy in his study, basically, like having a commune with Hashem, that's where he was. There was nothing else to him. There was no existence of an opponent. There was no concept of anything being against God in his reality, and therefore his reality sort of encompassed the whole world. It was where he was. He ushered into earth a place for the first time potentially in history where, at least where he was, there was no world. And the world was sucked into that. So all of a sudden the world agreed and they came into the place where there was no world. And they all gave themselves over. There was no more opposition. It's interesting to think about this concept in general, that basically whatever you summon in your place is sort of, you bring it into the actual reality. If you're in a bad mood, so a bad mood is walking around the earth. If you're in a good mood, if you're in like an unbelievably altruistic mood, whatever it is, if you're like accessing divinity, so divinity is in the world. And it's not just where you are, it's in the whole world because you're in the world. So the idea about these tzaddikim is that they're able to affect the whole world because what goes on inside of them, they bring it inside of planet Earth. It wasn't there before, and now it's there for everybody. So, therefore, by revealing this light of Shlomo, the bittul of the lower realms is a total bittul, and there was no war, literally, in the entire world. Okay, v'yesh lomar. To go on, ba'omek yoser, in a deeper way, degam kashabiruhu ba'ofen shamevarehu bimkomo. That now we're going to put a limit even on Shlomo. That even when the refiner is in such a way that he stays in his place, elashu bedarga kazu shamizbar yeshlo tefisas makom lagabe. But he's in a, okay, so if the refiner would stay in his place, but he's in a level where where Shamizbarer, the one who's being refined, holds place by him. So this is like a new category we haven't discussed yet, which is that you don't leave your place, but you do recognize the world. Right? Hu bimkomo elashahu bedarga kazu, but he's in a level that the one who's being refined holds place by him. So once again, the bittul will not be total. As long as like he thinks there's a world, the bittul will not be total. Accordingly, we can add a certain explanation. Shemashma ba'amaimer dezesha Shlomo haya ish manucha. That it implies in the Maimer, we're dealing with the Rebbe Rishab's Maimer, implies there that the Shlomo as an ish manucha, who mibnei shebiyamav, who kaim masihar ba'ashlamusa. Why do we say that he was a man of peace? Because in his day, the moon stood in its fullness. Meaning what? He was the 15th generation from Avram. Ashirus shelamayla memilia chasar. And he represented therefore a type of wealth that's beyond just filling a lack, if you recall. Ki amisis in the menucha v'shalom hu kashamanaged mizbatu b'tachlis. Because the true level of peace is when the enemy is completely nullified. And in order for the enemy to be completely nullified, it's only by drawing down a certain level of perfect wealth, real wealth. Let's just put this back on the map where we were talking about before. If you're going to draw down a level of godliness, which still is shaykh to the world, right? Then it's not going to nullify the world entirely, and therefore you're not going to have true peace. And what level what's the highest level that's still shaykh to the world?
Arich.
Arich, the lower level of Keser. And we said that basically that's called tzedakah, because since the world was lacking something and you're giving it back to it, so even though it's a tremendous revelation, it's still something that is shaykh to the world. The world had it before and lost it, now you're giving it back. So that's like generations before Shlomo came into the business. So everything the world got before Shlomo, there was not true peace, because the level of divinity that you were giving to the world was still worldly. Because it was something the world had and lost, and you were just replenishing it, you were giving it tzedakah. Comes Shlomo, and he brings the 15th generation, this idea of the full moon. And he brings a level of wealth that the world never saw before. In spiritual terminology, that means he brought a level of attick, which is beyond something which is relevant to the world, which represents what? A level of divinity which is not relevant to the world, which doesn't even know the world, and therefore can bring a total uprooting of the enemy, and therefore can bring true peace, because there's not even a place anymore where the enemy resides, and you're giving a level of divinity which is beyond the level of the world, therefore it has the power to uproot the worlds altogether. That's why in Shlomo's days there was full peace, because he brought a complete nullification of the enemy, because he brought a level of divine light which is beyond the worlds altogether, as we've been saying. That sort of line sort of wrapped up everything right there. You getting this? You getting this? Okay.
Yeah.
And what is that called? The Orein Social Mishaychus La'olamos. That's called a infinite light, which is beyond world, i.e. attick. Okay, so all is good so far. The Be'ora Shaykh La'olamos, in other words, we've said nothing new, we're just putting it into new context. Be'ora Shaykh La'olamos, when it comes to a light which is relevant to the worlds, Kolel Gam Ora Sovev, including even a Sovev light. Sovev meaning Keser, a light which is around the worlds but relevant to the worlds. When you reveal that light, since that light still gives place to the worlds, because even in Keser there's the idea of 10 spheros, and the 10 spheres that are going to bloom into a world, and therefore it's still relevant to the world. Olam milashon helam v'hester, and even the word world means concealment in Hebrew. Therefore, therefore the nullification of the opponent in the world by revealing this light is not a total bittul, and therefore there was still war until Shlomo's days. This that Shlomo is properly called a man of peace and a man of rest, is that Haya b'yamav, in his days, Shalom Haya b'yamav, hu mipnei sheb'yamav haisam shachas b'chinas attick ashirus. It's because he had a level of true wealth, which is called attick, i.e. above the worlds, and an ability to totally nullify the opponent. Good.
But didn't we already know this?
We knew this. But basically all we're adding here is this notion of this extra little point, basically, that his level of godliness doesn't consider the worlds, right? It's beyond the worlds. It doesn't consider. And also, we're adding something that we're basically going to say that Shlomo, even though he didn't leave his place, in a certain sense, he did still recognize the worlds. In other words, he's not the ultimate. If he was the ultimate, he would have been Mashiach.
Right.
So even though he represents attic, we're going to now, so to speak, forgive my words here, but like put attic in its place even. Right? Not so right away. There's like a lot of like little hoops that we have to go through in this mimer to get to it. But this is the ultimately where we're going, is that Shlomo would be on a level where even though he was beyond the worlds, and not only beyond the worlds on the level of Arich, but even beyond the worlds on the level of Atik, he was in a place where there was no worlds, but there still had some recognition of worlds there.
Right.
Because even though there was peace in his days, Mamish,
Not for all time.
which means that he did undo the opponent, it wasn't peace for all times.
Right.
It wasn't peace for all times. It ended.
It didn't transform them.
Exactly. We'll see what exactly was lacking from it. So there's yet another level where Atik doesn't do the trick. So actually, we're talking about Chassidus. In other words, we're not only talking about Atik. If Chassidus is supposed to be the Torah of Mashiach, it comes from a place which is really beyond the Atik. In order to come down and actually transform the world.
The true menucha.
It's a Matsiyahu level that we didn't get to yet, basically.
Wow.
It's going to be spread out to far as reaches.
Sounds like Mashiach is going to come really, really soon.
Right.
And you serve
Yeah, 100%.
to eat some of the leg, I tell you.
In other words, in order for them to get Shlomo's lessons, they had to come to him, right?
Right.
Here, the Rebbe put the lessons out to them. All right, but let's go on because there's mamish loops and hoops and ladders yet in this mimer. It's not so simple. There's some Kabbalah going on over here. You following everything?
Yeah.
It's interesting, no? Mamish. Okay, going on chapter Yud. It happens to be a very, very long mimer as well. So let's see what we can do in 15 minutes. Mamshich ba mimer. The Rebbe goes on. The Rebbe Rashab goes on. In Yina Chesed Shulam Mailam Gamma Shirus. Oh, here it is already. There's an Indian of Chesed which is called above wealth. Remember we talked about this at length. And that's why Gimilus Chasadim is Gamla Ashirim. That's why when it comes to giving, like Chesed, you can even give Chesed to the rich. And when we talked about this, that if you can give it to them to the rich, it doesn't mean to just make them richer, because that means they weren't rich in the first place. It means to give them some like new species of thing that they didn't even realize that they were missing. And that's called chesed. So there is a level higher than Shlomo, higher than wealth. And hu agilu glasi lavo. This is the revelation of the future. Shunayli yoser gam agilu shaya b'yamei Shlomo. It's even higher than the revelation of the days of Shlomo. Damshach b'yamei Shlomo ha'is b'chinas atik. That the drawing forth that Shlomo was able to access and bring into the world was the level of atik, as we explained, kanal. Okay, so this is the key word, what we're looking for. That the level of revelation of the future is called Penimius Atik. Okay, so in a certain sense, let me just confuse you. There's something called Keser, and there's something called Penimius Keser. What's Keser is Arich, Penimius Keser is Atik. So the Penimius of Keser is Atik. But then there's something called the Penimius of Atik. So therefore it comes out there's actually 3 levels of the Keser. And this is something very, 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 very fundamental. It's not talked about all that much in terms of like Maimarim that we've had before. But it is something which is a primary, basically leading concept throughout Kabbalah and Hasidus. That there's the Gimel Reishi, and there's something called the 3 heads. And they're talking about the 3 levels of Keser, and that's what it means. Arich, Keser in general. Atik, Penimius of Keser, and then Penimius of Atik itself. And that has a name also. It's called Reisha de Lo Yisyada. It's called the unknowable head. These 3 things are all called heads. The highest one is called the unknowable head.
Wait, Arich, Keser,
And the
Atik.
unknowable head. Arich is Keser. No, yeah.
Arich, Keser in general.
Wait. No. Arich is Keser in general.
Okay.
Arich.
Arich is like external Keser.
Okay.
But we also just call it Keser.
Okay.
Then you have Penimius Keser is Atik.
Okay.
The inner aspect of Keser is Atik.
Alright.
And then the inner aspect of the inner
The unknowable
aspect
one.
is the unknowable head.
How do you call it?
Reisha de Lo Yisyada. The head that is not knowable.
Wow.
They're all 3 called heads. And this one's called the unknowable head.
This is gonna get real.
Yeah.
So, Hainu Ein Sof Shebereisha de Lo Yisyada. He doesn't even say it. He just puts it into some acronym there. but it's right there, right? So this is the level of the future is Panimius Attic, which is Ein Sof, Shebereshis Delo Yisyada. There's another diuk there. It's not Or Ein Sof anymore. We're not talking about Or Ein Sof, the light of the Ein Sof. It's Ein Sof that's in the Reish Delo Yisyada, that's found in this unknowable head. So that means there's something beyond the unknowable head, which is the Ein Sof, period. But the Ein Sof has like a trickle-down effect, and it's found also in the unknowable head. So Ikur ha'inyan da'atik. And now he's saying a little further point, that really that's the ultimate level of atik. That when we say atik, oftentimes we could be talking about the external aspect of atik, which is Panimius HaKeser. But when we really mean atik, when we like want to throw out, the full gamut of the matter, because there's something called atik yomin and atik. So there's two ways of describing the thing called atik. Atik means ancient. So you call it atik yomin. You ever heard that word? Atik yomin we say every Shabbos, right?
Atik yomin.
So when you slap on atik yomin, you're already talking about the ancient of days. What are the days? The spheros. And atik also comes from the word ne'etak, which means to be removed. So usually when we say atik yomin, am I losing you guys yet?
A little bit.
It means a little bit?
A little bit a little bit.
Okay, because right now we're saying there's the atik itself.
Sorry guys.
Oh, yeah, we're mamish losing it. Everyone's walking away.
People got up and stuff.
Levi, what happened? Okay.
Sorry.
All right, let's not get lost here. We have atik, we're saying, we described as the middle level.
Right.
But we're saying really, when we say the real meaning of atik is actually the highest level. Mm-hmm. And I'm adding in from the side that's why there's actually two names for atik.
So is atik yomin higher than atik or atik?
No, there's atik yomin.
It's the external one.
And atik. Sometimes you just call it atik, like we've been doing.
Right.
So atik yomin is the middle level, and real atik just
Atik
alone is called the higher one.
Okay.
So I was getting to what does yomin mean? Days. It always refers to the sphere. To the sphere. Right.
Yomin,
So atik yomin means the ancient of days, i.e., he's beyond the spheros. And the word atik also means ne'atak, means to be removed from something, which means he's removed from spheros.
Whoa.
In that case, why do you have to even mention atik yomin? Right? So if you're mentioning as atik yomin, you're saying that there's a level which is completely removed from spheros. Which means you're not exactly 100% removing it. The fact that you have to say it's removed from spheros means it has some relationship to the spheros. And what's its relationship is that it's totally removed from them. When you just call it atik, then you're like sort of more properly saying what it is. Like it's pashut removed, and not from anything. It's just in a state of removedness. Right? And therefore that refers to the true highest level of the Reisha de lo Yisyata, the unknowable head.
And that's what you said about Shlomo, that he was atik, but
right, he
still recognized
he still had a sort of world going on.
Atik yomin,
he didn't. Right, he was atik yomin. He didn't leave his place, so he was removed. But in some way, he didn't explain how exactly, but he still had like the world in his mind in some way. Even though he didn't have it so much in his mind that he went into the world and like took them that seriously, but at least he sort of recognized their existence from where he was.
Wow. This Kislev is coming very soon. You can all feel it.
Okay, so going on. So there's this Panimius Atik, Hainu Ein Sof Shabaresh Lo Yisyada. It's the Ein Sof inside of this unknowable head. Shu Iker Inyan Da Atik. That's the main Atik, this higher third level. The higher. So let's clarify this all according to what it says in the Zohar. Be'edra Zuta. Edra Zuta. Hai Atika Ishtachech Betlas Reishim. It says that Atik is found in three heads, as we mentioned. Perush Harav Chaim Vital. Bebira Be'edra Zuta. When he gives the explanation of the Zohar, he says She'ikar Atika Hu Ha'ein Sof. We're actually giving a new name to Atik now. The actual Ein Sof is called Atik. Beyond all the three heads.
The God of old.
The Iker Atika is actually Ein Sof. But Va'al Shem His Almuso Begimel Reishim. But because it hides itself into three heads, Nikroim Gam Gimel Reishim B'Shem Atik. Then all three of those heads are actually called Atik. So now we're saying that even Arich is called Atik. We now actually have four things, they're all called attic in a certain sense, right? Even though in more exacting terms, we're going to call them 1, Ein Sof, 2, attic, 3, attic yomin, 4, arich.
Whoa. What? For world? What?
No, they're not 4 worlds, but the 4 things that essentially are all called attic on one level or another.
Okay.
Because what it says in the Zohar is that the true attic is the Ein Sof. Too much, huh?
True attic is the Ein Sof.
The true attic is the Ein Sof itself, right? But then it says because that Ein Sof hides itself into 3 heads, so those 3 heads are also called attic. Meaning what? That everything's called attic on a certain level. But what are those things that we're in more detail that we're calling attic? Ein Sof itself is the ultimate attic.
Right.
Beyond all the 3 levels of the Kesser.
And then you have Yomin.
And then you have attic,
And then you have
attic yomin, and erich anpin.
Wow.
Right? And they're all called attic because attic, which is Ein Sof, does invest itself or hide itself, he says, inside of all 3 of those levels of the Kesser, but at different levels. Right?
So the one
right? You ever heard the Mishnah says Shlosha Ksarim Hem? There's 3 crowns.
Uh-huh.
Kesser Torah, Kesser Kahuna, Kesser Shem, Kesser Malucha,
Right.
Kesser Shem Tov Ola Al Gabehen. So he says 4, right? Right? So it says there's 3 crowns, and another crown is higher than all of them.
But then
So this is like the 4 crowns that we're discussing right now.
And why do we say that attic is Reisha Deloid Yadata?
Because then we said, let's look at what the Zohar and the Reb Chaim Vital says on everything that we said, right? We said that really the Reb Chaim Vital puts it in his own language. He says, really, what is the true attic? Ein Sof above all the 3 heads. But because that Ein Sof hides itself inside of the 3 levels of Kesser, they all sort of get slapped onto them the name attic one level or another, in one way or another. Because attic is found, the Ein Sof is found in Kesser. All 3 levels of the Kesser.
Wow.
Did we say Zer Anpin was one of the...
Erich Anpin.
Erich Anpin. What's...
The lower level of Kesser. The external part
Erich,
of Kesser.
Erich.
Yeah, Arich.
Arich Anpin.
Arich Anpin. Okay, you with me so far? Ariel, you hanging in there? Al pi zeh ikar atika hu ein sof. Therefore, what is really called atika is the ein sof shebe chol gimel hareshin. Is the ein sof that's found in all the 3 heads, right? That somehow it hides itself inside of the 3 levels of Kesser. So in any place inside of those levels of Kesser where the ein sof is hiding, that is called atik in there.
Is it hiding or trickling down?
It says he's al muso. It hides in there. It conceals itself in there. Aval b'maimer zeh mevar sheikra inyan da'atik hu ein sof sheberesh lo yada. But in our mimer of the Rabbi Rashab, he focuses in and says that the main inyan of atik is primarily in the 3rd and highest head of the unknowable head. So in a sort of general way, we could say there's atik in all 3 of those heads, but in a mamish, the place where it sort of lodges itself and the Ein Sof is truly found is in the highest head, which is this level that we're saying Shlomo didn't even reach, the unknowable head, which is in the Mashiach. We want to explain this according to what it says in the Maimer, Behemshech Inyan, as the continuation of the Maimer goes on, Be'inyan Masha Kasufa Rab Chaim Bizal, in conjunction with what Rab Chaim Bizal says, Chaim Vital says in his beer of the Edja Zuta. So in other words, we want to connect our Maimer to the continuation of what Rab Chaim Vital says, which we're now going to hear the quote. He says, quote, Nimsa umis'alem umisgale begimel reishi. Remember, Chaim Vital basically is the Arizal. The Ari didn't write. So what we know as the writings of the Ari were written by Reb Chaim Vital. So every word is mamash exact, talking about worlds and worlds and levels. So he says that this Ein Sof, or this Atik, is found, 1, mis'alem, concealed, 2, umisgale, and revealed, 3, begimel reshin. He uses 3 languages basically to explain how the Atik comes down into the three levels of the Keser, and it's called Nimtza u'misalem u'misgale begimel reishin. It's found, hidden, and revealed in three heads. Shegimel halashonos, that these three terminologies, Nimtza, Misalem, u'misgale, found, hidden, and revealed, hem kamo gimel and yanim, they are compared to three things that we talk about in the parlance of Chassidus called Ata, Hu, V'Havaya.
Whoa!
You were asking about this, right? Okay, so in other words, not to confuse everybody, we're not getting really into new territory. We're just changing the language a little bit.
Whoa!
You okay?
Okay. Okay, I'm good.
Which is what we say in Chassidus, Ata Hu Hashem. It says in Tanakh, whatever.
Who is
Ata Hu Hashem.
Who is Hashem?
Right, you or He, God, right? So what does it all mean?
Oh man.
Nimtza Hu Kamo Ata. So the level where it says the Ein Sof, the attick is Nimtza, which is the first state of its coming into the three heads. That's like the level of Ata, what we call you, Hashem. When we address Hashem in the second person, you. Atzmus, the essence of God. Miz'alem u'mizgala, the next two levels, hem kamo hu v'havaya. They're like He, Havaya. Ata hu Hashem, right? So it's like Him, Hashem, is the level of concealed and revealed. Because we the statement of the Reb Chaim Vital was He's found, concealed, and revealed. So that's going on. You are He, Hashem. So the you is the essence of God, and the He, Hashem, are two levels of light that comes out of the essence of God. And those respectively are what we were talking about the whole time as the three heads. The unknowable head, the Penimius of Keser, which is called Attik, and the Chetzonius of Keser, or just Keser, which is called Arich. So that's called You, He, Hashem. Or found, concealed, revealed. The three heads.
Wow.
Getting this?
Yeah.
And what we're saying basically is that the first one, the first head, is the essence of God. Even though there's something above it called the Ein Sof. Because there's three heads of Keser. There's something above it called the Ein Sof.
Something higher than Ata.
Right? Yeah, something even higher than Ata. It's Him. Right? I mean, it's no words for it.
Right,
You're not addressing Him. It's Him.
You can't add,
right? But the first time you address Him is you. It's already as He comes down into the unknowable head. And that's the Ein Sof inside of the unknowable head. And we call that also the Atzmus. That's what he's saying here. That's not light. That's Him. And then the next two levels that He comes down, which is the next two levels of Keser, is two levels of revelation. One's called concealed and one's called revealed. Beis Madregos Ba'or. Two levels inside of light. Or within of light.
Which is
You following, David?
Yes.
which is Attik Yomin and
Which is Attik Yomin and Arich Ampin. Uperush Nimtza. So he goes into a little bit more of the actual wording. What does it mean Nimtza, which is found, which is level one, the highest level of the three heads? Hushu Nimtza Kamoshu Batzmusa. Why is he called found? Because he's found in the unknowable head, just punkt exactly like he's found in the Ein Sof itself. In other words, this is the Ein Sof's way of being in these three heads. So the first one is that he's found there. Just like he's found in the Ein Sof Mamish, he's found in the first head. That's why it's called Nimtza.
And that's why you say you.
That's why you say you.
First
second person,
right.
But you're talking to Him directly. He's talking to the actual one, right? So he's found there. That's why it's Atzmus is there. Therefore, we can explain further what it says in the Maimer. In the Attik, who be'ein sof bereisha dislo isyada. That's why when it comes already into Chassidus, he sort of a little bit saves us the whole rigmarole, and he says, by the way, the main point of Attik is definitely in the unknowable head. Because what is the real inyan of Attik? We said before, remember, go back to the Zohar. Attik is the Ein Sof. That's its true place. It's mamash God. But it comes down into the world. It hides itself into the world. The main place that it hides itself. where it's not light, it's not like a reflection of the thing, it's the thing itself is in the unknowable head, the top one, and therefore the Rebbe Rashab comes along, he says, by the way, the main place of attick is in the unknowable head, because it's the Ein Sof as it comes down into the beginning of expression, and that is that first level of Kesser. So by the time it gets to the Rebbe Rashab, he just says that the Iker Inyan of Attik is in the Ein Sof Shabaresha de Lo Yisyada. He sort of saves us the time of trying to figure out why and how, but it should make sense to us right now, because what comes after is not it anymore, it's light from it. And what comes before it is it in a way that's completely detached from anything we can even talk about. We don't even have a name for it.
Right.
So the first time, the main place there for Rav Attik is in this Panemius of the Panemius of Kesser, the third level.
Related to us.
Well, to some degree, I suppose you could say, but the whole inyan of it is that it's not related to us in any way.
Right, but the only thing that we could like call something. So if we can call something, then it's like sort of say like related to us. So that's why
it comes
it's
into the Kesser.
So that's why it's like the highest thing that we can.
Ulahosif. We'll just quickly end this paragraph. The Alpi Abir Ba Maimer the Inyan Nimtza. Regarding what it says in the Maimer, the idea of Nimtza, found. That the Ein Sof is found in this unknowable head, Beresh de Lo Yisyada. Hushu Nimtza Beresh de Lo Yisyada Kamoshu Batzmuso, is that it's found there exactly as it's found in the Ein Sof itself. So Yesh Lavar Zeh should be Yemei Shlomo Haisa Shiris Amisis. Going back to our point that in the days of Shlomo there was true wealth. It wasn't a relative wealth, it was the wealthiest you could possibly be. Wealth had been attained. Attik, or what we were up until now calling Attik, was fully revealed. Even though they did not have yet the revelation of the future. Because the chiddush of the future is that there will be revealed the essence of God, above light. And even though Shlomo had the second and higher level of light, it was still light that was revealed in his days, not the essence of God. The level of Giloyim, revelation, Shlomo, he had the full level of revelation. There was no more levels of light that could be achieved that Shlomo did not have. But on the other hand, he only had light. And therefore, there's what to go.
So he had
Something beyond the light.
Something beyond the light.
So he had Nimsa Bereisha de Lo.
A little technical.
What he had was the Reisha de Lo.
No, he did not have.
He did not.
He had what we called before Attik.
Which was
basically well, now it's a little bit confusing how we call it Attik. Before we were just calling it Attik, and the Reisha de Lo Yisyada is called Panemius Attik.
Right.
He did not have Panemius Attik. He had the external aspect of Attik.
So he had like
the middle level.
The Gyomin.
He had what we're calling Attik Yomin.
Gyomin. Just gonna write that down because if not, then I'm gonna be very confused.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Now you can start to perceive a little bit what's going on with Chassidus. Why are we so excited about it? All we do is talk about it and spreading it, and we're like kind of lost the plot a little bit. We're crazy for Chassidus because this is where Chassidus comes from. This is where Chassidus comes from.
I love that.
From Mamish. Reisha Lo Yisyada. It comes from the unknowable head. That's what it is. It's something beyond the level of Shlomo HaMelech.
Right, and everyone wants to know
Beyond the
Hashem.
light.
Yeah. Anyway.
Shkoyach.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, so is that the level that
I need to run.
Yeah, he was sort of wielding that type of. Yeah, he was higher than Shlomo. He didn't have it like Mamish in such a way that he could sustain it.
But he had it, but for the time he was.
Yeah.
He then defeated the.
Yeah. That's why it says
I was
Hanukkah.
going to say, Hanukkah has something to do with this.
Well, I don't know if we're going to make it. We might, yeah. The next mimer is a Hanukkah mimer.
Right.
Continuation of this, exactly. Like it's a little bit repetitive because Imam goes exactly into this whole thing all over
I
again.
was reading it this morning, yeah.
But you have it in
English.
Oh, they have it in English? Really? That's great.
Oh,
It's called Hanukkah V'Yashiv.
Vayeshev.
Vayeshev.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
That's great. Anyway, but yeah, we'll see.